welcome who's on the line. I just we just got back from the the Delaware CTR Excel meeting, as everybody knows, and I actually, because of that and being sick and other things, I actually looked at some of the stuff that Anne-Marie wrote. I know her slides, I know that she presented to you before, and tried not to be too redundant. I thought a lot of the stuff that she said was really right on and extremely, hopefully it was helpful. But I just I just threw some stuff together, and I was just going to go through it in probably not that much time, but then wanted to basically answer any questions. I'm not sure, everybody has a different trajectory, so I want to make sure, I could help, not just today, but even going forward because of the CTR, I can help people. So these are things that came to my mind regarding, if you want to be a physician scientist. And I think if you really want to do research, that's what you should consider yourself. And you should decide that's what you're going to be, and not really try not to settle for anything less than that, and really have the passion. If you don't have the passion, it's very difficult to do. It's not impossible, but I think it's a lot more difficult to do. So as soon as you people decide that at certain times, and I think it's possible to do it, later after you've already done private practice, but that's not been the case for you, which is good. That's the way to do it, is to show your skills and your interest and the fact that you really want to work hard at it before you establish yourself in a job, and then to ask for things as part of the job. So some of the things that I thought really made a difference, and some of them, the most important ones for me, are in blue, but I just tried to think of as many as possible, and this is not, none of this is exhaustive at all, but I think it obviously helps to know that you like research and can do well in it, by having had experience before, med school, residency, fellowship. I actually took a molecular biology workshop at Smith College when I was already attending in Detroit, and I'll talk more about that, but that completely turned my career around at that point. So there can be some area that you did not have experience with that you want to get a master's in clinical research or something like that, and just show that you've got the skills and, you're worth investing in, and go for it and try to get it. And people a lot older than anyone who's on the line, or even me, have done that even through Nemours, gone back and got a master's in public health or something that really gives you the extra credentials, and helps and sets up whole new opportunities with other people. You meet people doing that, you get new potential collaborations. So it's always something to think about. But there are also a lot of these little workshops. The NIH has a lot of young investigator workshops, so it's something worth looking on their website. Cold Spring Harbor. There are a bunch, if you are interested in a particular basic science area that you want to learn more about. And sometimes I think that really helps people, especially clinicians, get a whole new perspective that other clinicians don't have. And I think the more that you are a special individual, the better off. You've got special skills and expertise that no one else in your field has, the better it is.
Yeah.
I did a grant writing workshop at one point. I thought it was pretty helpful. They have those all the time, and those are more for R01s, but I think it's worth doing that. And there are a lot of other activities that are supported by our institution, or here there are a lot. So I think the idea would be that if the activities are on the schedule and you really want to do it, you should bend over backwards to clear your schedule to do it. And I've had a lot of support to do that. I think that we've got to make a point that if this is what we want to do, then we can't let the administrators hold us back and say, I'm sorry, you can't do this, that, or other thing because of clinical responsibilities. I think we have to be responsible about not canceling too many patients. But on the other hand, I think it shouldn't always be patients come first all the time. I don't think that's really fair for some of the other things we do. So, so this is more general for people who, deciding where they want to head. Do they need any lab? Do they need to have a lab? And this actually worked out really well with Ryan Davies, who didn't have a lab but wanted to do research that involved some lab component. And so his work is being done in my lab. So around here, it's really possible to connect with people and get things done in all different areas that might come up as an area that you want to pursue. So the other thing is that I think really key is the bottom part of this slide is that you're trying to focus on a specific area that other people aren't doing. You don't have a lot of other competition. You're different because you're a physician, you take care of patients. There are a lot of PhDs out there that may want to do that particular area of research, but they don't have the clinical acumen that you have and the insight that you have. So that goes a long way. And I think that the NIH is supportive of physicians doing research in general. So if you show that you're serious scientists, but also have clinical background, I think that's really helpful. And that's the one thing that I think has helped me the most is really working with collaborators. And it turns out, I haven't tried to be really savvy about it going forward, thinking, oh, what's really going to work the best to get me funded. But it turned out that the way that I did it is what really helped, because I established relationships with people in complementary fields that could make my stuff look better. And then the relationships have continued for, one of them is 10 years long now. And they have complementary expertise, and yet they appreciate that my expertise is different as well. And so it meshes very well. Yeah. And then they have their own track record, and they are, hi. Okay. So I was just talking about the importance of collaboration. And this is, hi. And I think this is the key thing, and this is being recorded if you wanted to ever go back and see the meaning of it. But the thing that I think has really helped me get my R01, and that if I get it renewed is going to be key, is having developed relationships with basic people in genetics or in working in related fields, but not quite the same, and so that our expertise meshes quite well. And I think that looks really good, and especially if those people have their own funding, or they're at CHOP or Penn and are well-funded institutions. It just really looks good on paper. So, I've also realized that, one of my relationships is, as I was just saying, is at least 10 years long. It's probably longer than that. It's probably almost as long as I've been here, so 15 years. And she was here, but she's not here anymore. It's Marcella Devoto. But we are still extremely close and work really well together, and it's just invaluable. I would not be doing what I'm doing if it weren't for her. So, and I've realized that there are other people that I've tried to work with who were more, not as disparate, but more people in my own field that had similar research disease interests, but it was more of a competitive relationship rather than a collaborative relationship. And after hitting myself over the head with that for a number of years, stopped having the relationship and just found other people to work with. And so I think that you have to realize when things aren't working, when it's better to just, you know, unless you're doing something, if they're working with you and that theoretically having them collaborate with me should have helped their, you know, them in some way, but I guess they didn't, and that's probably why they didn't continue it. But I just to recognize that and to know when to move on is really helpful. I always, you know, you guys already have your job, but you know, when I came here, and I was going to talk a little bit about my career path at the end, but when I first came here, this is the first job that I came to without protected time. I had protected time in all the other jobs. I had 3 jobs before this. So, and when I came here, I talked to some people here because I still had the interest. I didn't really want to give it up. I thought I was probably going to, but I didn't really want to. So I talked to Steve McKenzie, who was here at the time. He said, oh, you need at least 75% effort to succeed. And I said, you know, that's crazy.
75% protected?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I said, I'm a surgeon, you know, I can't do that. And so I didn't ever do that until now, but it makes a huge, huge difference. And I think Emery told you that too. It's huge. And if you can get it at least for a period of time to the point where you get an R1 or you get a K, you know, just to, or you get it whatever you need to help propel you forward. It is really hard. And so if you don't, you're in a position of power before you take a job, or also if you have the job and you've shown that you've gotten grants or you've been successful, you've written papers. Here, you're a big fish in a small pond, relatively, and you should think it for, you know, really take advantage of that and recognize that they want clinician scientists here. They want to support us, and if you show that you can be successful in some way and continue to request support, I think you can get it, as long as it doesn't interfere with what you want to do with your clinical career. And, you know, as a surgeon, I was 50% for a long time, but that was enough for me to get enough clinical engagement to continue to do okay. So the other thing is, even if you've been here for a while and opportunities arise or needs arise, you should request what you need. And I've done that intermittently. I've only when I've needed it. And then I requested, you know, to recruit somebody, a basic scientist at one point. And our relationship didn't work out that well, unfortunately, but he helped contribute to the COBRI. And he ultimately left, but it was still a positive experience for the institution, and it helped the institution and the COBRI renewal. So you never know what's going to happen over time. You should not be afraid to get what you need, because if you don't get what you need, it's not going to work. It really isn't. It's hard enough as it is. So, and I think it's, you know, you don't have to get NIH funding, but I think when you do, it gives you so much leverage that then you can sit back and enjoy it and really work hard on what you want to do, and then it builds your confidence and your strength, and makes you more able to go farther beyond that. So the other, sure.
In your protected time, like how did you or actually maybe I shouldn't say time, like how did you divide your research effort? Like how much time did you spend on actual bench work? How much time did you spend writing for grants? How much time did you spend on actually writing articles and getting published? And of course, I'm kind of that's the question I have. Sometimes I feel like I'm at the bench most of the time, not getting enough time to actually read and write, and sometimes the other way. So just to have an idea for a successful.
So I don't spend any time at the bench, and I haven't for years.
Like even in the very beginning?
Yeah.
Oh,
I got myself a technician. My technicians are so much better than I am. I could never do the quality work that the technical people that shouldn't call them technicians, because right now I have higher level people, and I was going to talk about that because they are independent. So when I'm not there, the days that I'm not there, things keep going. We talk a lot. We talk on a daily basis almost, but I don't need to be there to oversee things. And they know enough about the project that we're all moving in the same direction. And I trust them. So I know when I'm not there, they're working hard. And so there's no downtime. So I don't think it's really possible if you're doing lab stuff to expect to be in the lab yourself as a clinician scientist. I really don't think the time that you would be spending, which may be as little as 1 day a week, but hopefully would be 2 or 2.5 days a week, should be reading, writing papers, designing experiments, interpreting data, and writing grants. And that is a lot of time. And that I'm also, you have to work nights and weekends too. I mean, I do that all the time. I do that now.
I mean, I work on the bench on the weekends.
Yeah. So I think you got to think of alternative strategies there. Okay. You can. There are a lot of labs,
I feel like different. Like in my fellowship, it was different. Here, it's a little different. And my friends who work in other labs, it's different. Like I know somebody who literally does 100% of it himself. So I'm just trying to figure out what's ideal, what's good.
Well, ideally, I would think it would be getting somebody who is technically very capable and letting them do it for you and not doing it yourself.
But without funding,
right?
How do you ask for that support?
It's not that you can get a grad student.
That's true. Yeah.
You can, if you really don't have any funding, you can try to get a grad student. You can get a summer student to start off with. Someone straight out of college doesn't pay. It's not a high-paying job, so it's possible. And if you split it with somebody or get some time, negotiate to get some of the time of somebody already working in one of the labs. There are all sorts of creative ways of doing it. So it's something to talk to people about. And if you're not getting the information that you need, I've gone to multiple people, even to Vicki at times, just to find out, how to get these things, what's feasible and what's not. You shouldn't be afraid to ask for it. Otherwise, now's the time where you need all of that, because we know how it goes in research. For all of the experiments you do, or all of the studies that you do, you get good data about 10% of the time or something like that, and I've got tons of data that I haven't published yet because I don't have enough of it, or I haven't proved anything. You know what I mean?
Right.
So you've got to get it from the get-go.
I just wanted to make sure that I'm not asking too much.
But if you've already gotten some support and you've shown that you've passed a barrier where your project has been reviewed, you've got some funding, then you need to leverage what you have to get more, and just be a good negotiator. So, and also when you're protected, you have to be completely protected. When I first came here, I wasn't, and when I was first on the COBRI, if somebody, if one of my patients came in, so I would just work certain days a week. I don't work 1 week on and 3 weeks off like you guys do. I just have the schedule. So X days are clinic day, 2 days are clinic, and 1 day is OR, and then the other 2 are research or something like that. That was pretty much the way it was. But on those 2 other days, if one of my patients came in sick, they call me. And again, and I know that happens to Ryan Davies all the time because he doesn't have, and they're his patients, and it's important, but I think that is difficult. And it's better to have your colleagues completely protect you. So now that's the way it is. I never get that. I do, and I do deal with stuff periodically, but for the most part, I'm protected. And I think you've got to have that time to sit down and just have a big span of time where you're doing nothing but thinking about what it is you want to do with your research.
Yeah, that one's right.
Yeah, you do. But it's like they don't. It's like we still have to like teach them, and the fellows are not like here all the time either. They're also like post call. They have their duty hours.
But there may be
And-
people that exist already that work in the lab that can help train them or work with them.
Right.
There may be people whose funding is running out that have people who've worked here forever and they want to transition those people to work with somebody else. There's all sorts of stuff going on, and if you don't ask, you won't know.
I was
Yeah.
also thinking about helping to protect our time. When I had the MRDA funding, the GI fellows get the calls from the nurses that would have otherwise gone to me. Because
Oh,
the nurses
okay.
knew I was doing research that day. And it worked fairly well. So I was just thinking if there are NICU fellows, if there are clinical issues that would come up when you're trying to be protected, if not your colleagues, who could handle them, and it might be helpful when you have the fellow program as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Unless it's something that is a sensitive issue with a family or
Right,
something.
And the nurses
That's
knew
different. That's not that common, though.
to get it to me.
Where they, yeah, right,
Situations.
exactly. Like if it's one of my complications, you know, and I didn't show up or something like that, you know. So, this is what we've been talking about. Exactly. The third one there on offsets, I mean, we're going to continue to work on that. And Brent King is my supervisor now, and I've taught, you know, this is there are ideas that I brought to him about how to be able to support certain people that show promise that need to move forward and if that's what they want. I think the hardest part is when people are ambivalent themselves about what they want. And I think you've got to, this is one area it's not good to be ambivalent because you'll get stuck in the middle somewhere. So you have to decide, this is what I want to do. This was my first slide here. You got to decide ahead, you know, going forward, this is what I want to do. I'm devoted to this. I'm passionate about it. I want it as part of my career. I want to keep doing it as long as I possibly can. I personally would like to do it even longer than clinical care, although I don't want to give up clinical care. But it's something, when I work on the weekends, it's, you know, I do my epic charts, but I'd much rather read about, you know, things that relate to my research. So if you want to do that, you've got to decide, you've got to make it work for yourself, whatever way that you can. And if you just do it halfway or you're ambivalent about doing it and you really, part of you would rather be in the clinic seeing patients I don't think you should rather see patients. I think you should be pretty even with it, you know, and that's the way I feel. I love patients, but I also love doing research. And so if you're ambivalent because you're worried about compensation or, you know, you've got to figure out what your priorities are, figure out what you need to achieve, and then write it all down, and then go talk and make sure that your mentor or somebody here that's supporting you at any level of the administration helps you achieve what you need to achieve. Otherwise, I think it's going to be very difficult. It is very difficult under the best of circumstances. So,
So when you came and you said you didn't have any protected time initially, how did you kind of leverage?
So I'll talk about that
Okay.
at the end. I'll just go through this stuff, and these slides are available to anybody. But I think the bottom part here is key. You know, that if you're a special individual that has a special skill, and it's true here for administration too, there are division chiefs that really have special skills, and the institution depends on them for their skills. I think if we have research skills and we can help build the research expertise of the institution, that has value. And I think that Roy and Brent think it's valuable. And I think so what we should be doing is trying to do everything we can to make remain successful, but also, you know, encourage recruiting people that either in our departments or other departments that have the same mindset that you can collaborate with, that will also be pushing this all forward, so that we build we get to a point of critical mass. Yeah, it's a word that I somehow I never think of when I need it. But that's what we need. That's what we ultimately need. And I think people realize that if you're thought of as a good research institution, you're also often thought of as a good clinical institution, even though we are a good clinical institution already. Yeah. But I think it augments that. So these are just some basic. I think the stuff that Anne-Marie talked about before, that her slides were really great. But one of the things I've learned from a couple of people is the simpler you are, the better it is. Don't try to be too complicated when you're writing a grant at all. Try to be extremely, assume that they're going to have difficulty understanding what you're saying, and make sure you're completely clear and very straightforward. Yeah. Don't ask for too much initially. And, don't have too many aims. If anything, 2 aims and 4. My grant was 4 years. My R1 was 4 years. And fortunately, I had carryover, and it's going to end up being 5.5 years. But it's still, rather than ask for too much, I think it's better to just show that you're just asking for what you need and not being unreasonable in your approach. I looked at this. Even recently, I've looked at other successful applications that are online. They're available, that we can get for you. There's some other great resources for writing specific aims pages, and I spent more time this last time on my specific aims page than anything else. I kept going over and over and over and changing it multiple times. So I think you shouldn't spread yourself too thin with having too many people giving you advice, but find some good people fairly early on. Try to get a draft, at least of these specific aims, but as much of the protocols you can, to multiple people, not just the usual suspects, but as many other different people that you could find, even maybe not in your field, that can just review it from a grantsmanship point of view. I think is really helpful. Can they understand it? I mean, I should be able to understand what you're writing, even though I don't know anything about it. I should be able to, and if I can't, there's a problem. Yeah. And so there are a bunch of things that help me, and I think is that I did some summer research and got my name on a couple papers in medical school, and then fortunately, we had a research year during my residency that was completely protected. Really? So that helped a lot. I wrote papers, and I presented at an annual meeting, and I won a prize. And then somebody noticed me, and they asked me, and I'm just telling you this because it's like a snowball. Yeah. You never know. You got to just keep your feelers out, because you never know how one thing can lead to another and how it can, end up. So I went to someone from Cornell approached me and said, do you want to apply for this fellowship program from the American Foundation of Urologic Disease for 2 years and do research for 2 years? And most people would say, no, I want to go out and practice and earn money. And so I said, sure. So I did that and worked with Juliana Barano-McGinley, who was really great. And then I stayed at Cornell for a year, and I didn't like it. And then I went to Arkansas Children's Hospital. And then I went back to Children's Hospital of Michigan, where I did my clinical fellowship. And I spent 3 years in both of those places. I had protected time at both of those places, but I never got I got internal funding, but I never got anything external.
When you say internal funding, that's like from the Department of Peace?
No, it was the institution. They had internal, pilot project grants and stuff.
Do they still have that?
Not here, but I'm hoping that we'll get them back at some point. Yeah, so when I came here, they did.
Got it.
Yes,
okay.
When I came here, they still had it here.
Okay.
So
would you consider, pardon the interruption, CTR pilot grants internal or external?
External.
That's external.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
And that's what they'll look like on your biosketch too.
Okay.
They'll look better. So yeah.
Thought so. But
yeah. So, and then I went to a molecular biology training workshop for 2 weeks. So my clinical chief paid for 2 weeks in the summer. Was it a month? I think I may have spent a month at Smith College one summer taking a molecular biology course. I didn't know anything about molecular biology. And now, so that completely turned my career around. If I hadn't done that, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today.
That's interesting that you said that, because I am looking for something like that. I mean, I learned a lot of bench stuff in my fellowship, but that's there. But I kind of feel like I would benefit from a more formal training.
It's bench research. It's bench work.
Exactly.
You stay in the dorms there. It was great. I had young kids at the time. I left them with my husband and my father-in-law. But it worked out really well. I didn't do that bench research, but I learned the principles.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I did it when I was but I came back and I never did it myself because I
know to do a few things that I learned from fellowship, but if I want to do something new,
yeah, exactly.
then I don't know how to do it.
That's right.
So,
and there are a lot of workshops like that you should find out about in an area of expertise. And then they talk about proteomics or all sorts of omics or data analysis.
Informatics.
Yeah.
Is that available at UD?
A lot of it
Those
is.
kind of courses.
Some and some through the NIH. I mean, I can forward this stuff to you guys every time I see it. I'd be happy to, just so you can see it. Things like that come through. But they're usually theme-oriented. Like if you're interested in environmental toxins or you're interested in, they're usually disease or biological theme-oriented. There are some through Cold Spring Harbor and other places like that. So let me find out more about how we can get these things circulated to everybody.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that came about the red cap came through one of Erin's emails. That was helpful. It was about how to make databases, for data collection.
Right.
There was one course, Coursera, right? Which was, I didn't complete it, but whatever I did was helpful.
Mm-hmm. There's a statistics course here and that's good, but also there's anything you do, you should send it to the biostats core, the CTR, anything and everything. Okay. Yeah. And they do it, they want to, and they're not that busy yet. So, when I came here, I was pretty much, so I could have gone to back to Northwestern, which is where I trained, or go to Baylor when I came here, and I didn't do either of those. I came here to think, I'm just going to move here because I like the area and I'm not going to do research anymore. But I had this rat colony, and they said, oh, yeah, you can bring your rats. So I brought my rats, and then I realized they had internal funding here. I said, okay, I'll write a grant so that I can get some funds to pay for the rats. And then, so that helped. And then we got the COBRI. I was a target investigator on the COBRI. And then so things just kept, once you get some success, it builds over time, I think. And that's, and then you're able to get more of what you need as you move on. I have also, and choosing an area, we talked about this before you guys came, but choosing a niche, and something no one else in your field is looking at. No one else has the combination of your expertise to look at it. Other basic scientists might be trying to look at it, but they don't understand the clinical implications. Or there are a lot of people studying cryptorchidism or have been, but they're all on some, weird, to me, they've never quite looked at it quite the same way. There's a guy in Australia who's published 300 papers, and he's gotten farther and farther off the beaten track with it. And he's published everything in the Journal of Pediatric Surgery, and so I'm in a different place than that. And so you find your own niche, and then people ask you to be on committees and stuff like that. so I was on the Cryptorchidism Guideline Committee, which wasn't that time consuming, but it gives you this huge visibility. And I think it helps to have stuff like that on your biosketch. I think to a point, I think you've got to, that's another thing, is knowing when to say no, making sure that people don't abuse you. I've written some review articles and I've written chapters, and it's a pain, but actually in retrospect, I said no to the right ones and yes to the right ones. And you learn a lot by writing a chapter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it was worthwhile from that point of view. But I think because I was on national committees, it helped being on the CTR, and the CTR has given me more research time and more experience. So I think you never know what direction your career is going to go. So it's good to have various skill sets as you go forward, but also not to let people eat up your time too much, and really know when to say no. You don't have time to do things. And then I started interacting with Rob and Marcella here at Nemours, and that has helped move things forward tremendously. And I've had a lot of division, department, and institutional support. So, and I think what's good is that you just build on that over time, and then they see what you're doing, and it's a positive reinforcing thing. The better you do, the more support you get, and that it can get to the point where things just take off. And I think that's what we all hope for all of us, to do. And so you've got to make sure that you don't get pulled too much in a direction that's not going to move you forward. And one of them might be spending too much time in the lab yourself, or writing papers that are not peer reviewed. Another thing that's not necessarily helpful. So when you could be writing papers that are peer reviewed. So what this led to was really great, because when I wrote I wrote 2 grants recently, and because of the CTR and all, I have all these new connections.
Right.
And those Kate Nathanson at CHOP is someone that Marcella knew. The last 3 people are people that I called or emailed, and they knew of me and I knew of them, and now they're on my grant. So you can do that. And they're supplying samples and data and expertise, and that really looks good. When you write a grant, you've got all these people with their own biosketches that look pretty good in similar areas. Mm-hmm. And they write you a letter of support that says, I'm more than happy to, I think that stuff really helps a lot. And so it's worth. So anyway, that was the end of what I wanted to say. If there's 15 minutes more, but any concerns or things that you're worried about? I guess we don't have to record it anymore, do we?
Yeah.